See, that's how you get the fans hype. Sit on the couch, have a few drinks, a few sodas. Promised them that I wouldn't be too biased. Best idea for anybody listening to this: pick everything that I'm picking against. Welcome back to Tyler's Tailgate Talk. Back again this week for another episode 7 for week 7. We're going to get right into it because we got a big week of college football. A lot going on this week, a lot going on last week. So we'll get everything covered. Let's start right in with the biggest headline coming out of last week. Number 1 ranked Alabama getting knocked off by unranked Texas A&M. A huge game for Texas A&M as they finally get that huge win over Alabama that they've been missing the past few years. Alabama falling to an unranked team, which we haven't seen in over 100 games. They had a 100-game win streak versus unranked teams snapped against Texas A&M on Saturday, and I believe it was 21-game win streak snapped, dating back to 2019. Their last loss was to Auburn. So a huge, huge game on Saturday. Wild back and forth game. Came down to some crucial calls towards the end, and then finally the game-winning field goal that Texas A&M had a very easy shot at to ultimately win the game. Alabama, I'll have to say, did not play a great game. Bryce Young was not himself. There was a lot of drops on the offensive side with the receivers. The offensive line couldn't really get anything going for the run game. Pass protection wasn't good. The defense in particular wasn't great. There was a lot of times where some of these A&M receivers were getting wide open. But I mean, big props to Texas A&M. They just came out in College Station, a home game for them, crowd roaring, all 112,000 of everyone in College Station, just showing up for the home crowd and getting it done over number 1 ranked Alabama. So a great scene there in Texas as Texas A&M knocks off Alabama. So we have a new number 1 in the AP polls as Georgia jumps up to number 1. Bama drops down to number 5. We'll take a quick look at the AP poll in a couple minutes because I do want to get into it because we're kind of getting into that area where we're kind of starting to look at the college football playoff and how these teams are ranked right now, what they need to do to either get themselves into the playoff or what could happen to maybe ruin teams' playoff chances. So just a few more headlines from last week. Number 3, Cincinnati. They keep rolling. Big win last week over Temple. They're going to keep it going, undefeated, trying to be the first Group of 5 school to make the playoffs. So that's going pretty good for them. A big game, number 4 versus number 3 last week that we had, Iowa versus Penn State. Iowa won that game with a late field goal. So big win for Iowa. A lot of people have been doubting them because they don't have the best offense in the country, or they're not up there with the best in the country. It's really a defense wins their games kind of thing. And that really showed against Penn State, holding them to only 20 points. So Iowa jumps up to number 3. Iowa jumps up to number 2. Penn State drops down to number 7. So it might be tough for Penn State now with that one loss. Again, they're still the best ACC school, so that definitely counts for something. Problem is the ACC has not been good this year, so we'll see how far that can take them. I mean, the second best ACC team is Wake Forest this year, sitting at 6-0, number 16, and then after that, you got NC State ranked, and that's it. So the ACC is not strong this year. We know that. Clemson is just a non-factor this year. We obviously know that. So it'll be interesting for Penn State to see what games they need to win to get themselves up there. I'm sorry. Penn State's in the Big Ten. It'll be interesting to see what ACC teams can get up there in terms of maybe making a New Year's Six or a college football playoff. Big headline, obviously, from last week is the Red River Showdown, Oklahoma taking on Texas. It was a great game, might be game of the year when it's all said and done. Texas came out with a huge lead at halftime and going into the second half. And then slowly but surely, Oklahoma, especially after the benching of Spencer Rattler, which we'll talk about, Oklahoma finally making that comeback. And it'll be interesting to see what Oklahoma does going forward, because with their whole quarterback situation, I'm just pulling up the stats now. It's kind of a situation where you might see Spencer Rattler start a game in the near future, and then maybe you'll see a Caleb Williams just finish the last 3 quarters of it. We're kind of not used to seeing this kind of thing in college football, where you have this level of player like Spencer Rattler. Like, coming into the season, this guy was a Heisman hopeful, somebody looking at a very high draft stock in the NFL draft in the next coming years. Supposed to be the best quarterback in college football, and obviously he's been anything but that. So we'll see what happens with Oklahoma. They're sitting at number 4 right now, sitting comfy. They're not a very convincing number 4. They've played some very close games. So again, not too sure exactly where they're at right now, but we'll definitely find out in the next coming weeks. Still a big win over Texas, because that is their game that they need to win every year. They've got TCU this week, so not a huge game. Expected to win that one. So we'll see what happens. I've heard rumors that Caleb Williams has been taking first team reps in practice. So if that's the case, that could be big for Spencer Rattler, is if he's getting benched and won't even get to start against TCU. So I don't know, maybe Lincoln Riley's trying to be proactive and get Caleb Williams out there against TCU, a team that's not great, a team that Oklahoma's expected to beat. Might be a squash game. And get him out there, get him some reps, and see what happens, see how it goes. So we'll see what happens with Oklahoma. A big game out of the SEC last week. Ole Miss taking on Arkansas. Ole Miss finds out how to win the game somehow. Great game, 52-51. Arkansas drops from number 13 to number 17. Ole Miss goes from number 17 to number 13. So they swap spots in the AP poll. Again, Arkansas is going through the ringer right now with the Georgia game and the Ole Miss game. They've got Auburn this week. They play LSU. I mean, this is a team that is going through a tough stretch of games, and they're not looking too bad. They had a bad showing against Georgia, but in a lot of people's eyes, they'll look past that because it is Georgia. And obviously Georgia right now is the best team in the country. So Arkansas putting up a fight against Ole Miss, a team that everyone knows is really good, only losing by 1. Yes, it's their second loss of the year, but at the same time, when your 2 losses are to 2 potentially top 10 teams when it's all said and done, that's not going to hurt the Razorbacks too bad. And the last thing from last week, the biggest game of the year, in my opinion, obviously, UMass and UConn. I had a lock for it last week. I don't think the lock hit. I don't think it did. No, it did, actually. I'm sorry. The lock hit from last week. So UMass, UConn, big game. UMass comes out with a dub. Fans storm the field up in Massachusetts. great game, great for college football that that kind of game is getting that much publicity. So interesting, interesting result there. But unfortunately, we don't have any garbage bag games this week like we did past 2 weeks with UMass and UConn and Vanderbilt. So we actually got competitive football this week. But let's get into the locks because we had a good week last week, or a good week in my eyes. Still waiting for that winning record, but last week we did go 2-2. I did have Texas +3 against Oklahoma, and that didn't hit. And I did have the under on the Penn State Iowa game, which was looking really good until that game-winning field goal, which made it 23-20 with a total of 43 points. So the under of 41 didn't hit, but we were close. We did hit on Georgia and Auburn, though, with Georgia -15 and taking the 24-point win. So that was an easy hit there. And then obviously we had UMass +3, and UMass took the outright win over UConn 27-13. So win by 14 +3. We'll take that. 2-2 on last week. Not too bad. We're hoping for a winning record this week. I'm liking the picks this week. I'm confident. We're 6-9 overall in the year. So getting closer to that average mark, but I want to get to that winning record when by the time we get to bowl season. That's the goal. I don't think it'll happen because I'm terrible at this, but I want to get to that winning record by the time we get to bowl season. That's the end goal when it's all said and done. So, but we got locks for this week. Big locks for this week. Like I said, I'm feeling good about these. There's probably one. Usually there's like one or two. I think there's only one this week that I'm kind of iffy on. I haven't been great at the over-unders, actually, and I'll say that. I've only hit once on an over-under. So maybe I need to just stop doing those. But I tried one this week, so let's see how it goes. So first off, we got the over-under back for number 11 Kentucky, undefeated Kentucky, taking on number 1 ranked Georgia, undefeated Georgia. They've got the over under at 44.5. I'm going to take the over. I think that Kentucky and Georgia are going to put up a better game, a more high scoring game than what Penn State and Iowa showed up with last week. Georgia's offense is one of the best in the country. Their defense is also one of the best in the country. So I think Kentucky's score will be kind of low. So I think if they put up 10, I think the over is going to be easy because I have a feeling that Georgia's going to put up a lot of points. I have a feeling that this is going to be kind of like a Georgia-Arkansas kind of game, where you think it's going to be close. You think these are two really good teams. They're going to have a great game. And then Georgia just ends up blowing them out. So I feel like that's the kind of direction we're headed here. So I'm going to take the over 44.5 on Georgia and Kentucky. Next up, I haven't bet them. I haven't had them in a lock this year, but I'm going to have them this year. I'm going to have them this week. Number 5 Alabama taking on Mississippi State. Alabama, obviously, like I said, coming off that huge loss against Texas A&M. And I mean, I can only imagine the words and the things that Nick Saban has done this week to this team in practice. Just chewing them out for everything. I mean, film must have been tough this week. Practice must have been tough. It hasn't been the coolest of weeks in Tuscaloosa. It's pretty warm and toasty down here. So I have a feeling practice was not fun. So Nick Saban mad and upset. I'm taking Alabama -17, given 17 points to Mississippi State. Mississippi State hasn't really been great this year. They've shown flashes of good football, but have yet to really put it together. Alabama, in my opinion, is still the second best team in the country, despite their number 5 overall ranking. So I'm taking Bama minus 17, easy. You can lock that one in. Another lock that I've got this week, number 10 Michigan State taking on Indiana. Now, Michigan State's been very, 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 very good this year. Kenneth Walker has just shined. And taking on Indiana, a team that hasn't really been great. They've had some good games, but they haven't played anybody great this year, and they haven't performed against anybody great this year. So for that reason, I'm going to take Michigan State. Kenneth Walker, I feel like he's just going to go off. Indiana, like I said, struggled to score points against Penn State, didn't score any points against Penn State, struggled to put together drives against Cincinnati. They got killed by Iowa earlier this year, so they're playing good teams, but they're not showing up when it counts. And the teams that they are beating are nothing to write home about. So I'm not a big fan of this Indiana team. Big fan, though, of Michigan State and what Kenneth Walker's got going down there. Could be a Heisman hopeful out there in Michigan State. Michigan State giving 4.5 points as the number 10 overall team in the country. I will take that all day. You can hammer down Michigan State on that one. Definitely minus 4.5. Last one we got for this week. Going back to the SEC, we got 3 SEC games in the locks this week. Number 13 Ole Miss taking on Tennessee in the Manning Bowl. Eli's Ole Miss taking on Peyton's Tennessee. Unfortunately, we don't get the Manning broadcast for this game, which I was hoping so badly for. Ole Miss giving 2.5 points as the number 13 ranked team in the country against Tennessee. I love that way too much. I think Ole Miss is potentially, besides Georgia, Alabama, I think you got to put them at number 3 in the SEC in terms of where they're at. Matt Corral is putting together one of the best seasons I've seen. Obviously a tough game against Alabama, but it is Alabama. The rest of the year, he's been spectacular. I think he is one of the best quarterbacks. I think he is the best quarterback in the SEC. Besides, and that includes Bryce Young and JT Daniels, whoever Georgia just decides to start a quarterback. So I really like this Ole Miss team giving 2.5 points. Come on, against Tennessee, and I'm ranked Tennessee. I'll take Ole Miss at minus 2.5 for sure. You can lock that one in. So that'll do it for locks this week. But we do have some upsets that I'm keeping my eye on as potential upsets, because, like I said, this college football season has been one of the craziest I've ever seen in my life, and it's only gonna get crazier. So here are some upsets that you can watch for this week, brought to you by me. Number 25, Texas is taking on number 14, Oklahoma State. Texas had a great showing last week against Oklahoma, just fell up short. Oklahoma State, I'm really liking this Oklahoma State team more and more as they play more and more games. They've shown why they're up there in terms of the rankings of number 14. I'm sorry, now they're actually number 12, 14 last week, 12 this week. I'm really loving this game out of Oklahoma State. Spencer Sanders has been great as a quarterback. Jalen Warren just killing in the run game. Jalen Warren, probably one of the best running backs in the Big 12. Big fan of his. So I got to say, Oklahoma State, undefeated, but haven't really played anybody. They played Kansas State. They played Baylor, 2 teams that are not great. Texas is going to be tough. And Texas, we've seen with Bijan Robinson, has played some really good football and is probably one of the best number 25 ranked teams I've ever seen. So I'm going to take. I would look for this Texas team to upset Oklahoma State in a potential really big game. Another one, Arkansas taking on Auburn. Auburn's been shaky. It's Bo Nix is having one of those years where he's either Johnny Manziel or he's Bo Nix, and Bo Nix is not a good thing. What he has shown in the past 2 years is not great quarterbacking, but this year he's had flashes of Johnny Manziel-esque type quarterback skills. So I have a feeling that if we see that out of him, and we see that such just crazy style of football out of Auburn, we could get a big upset against Arkansas. And it'll be a good game for sure. I think a lot of people are sleeping on this game just because Arkansas is ranked and Auburn's not, and Arkansas has had a great year and Auburn hasn't. But this game is definitely a big game to watch for in the SEC West. Absolutely. Another upset potentially. Again, you never know. Unranked Tennessee taking on Ole Miss. Like I said, Ole Miss has had their struggles here and there. Didn't play particularly great last week against Arkansas. Just beaten by 1. Again, I mentioned how good Arkansas is, but Ole Miss, I expected a lot better out of them. Tennessee's coming in. They've played good football. I'm not going to lie. They just had some rough games, but they've shown up at times. If they do decide to show up against Ole Miss in Tennessee at Neyland Stadium, I think this could be a potential big upset for the Volunteers. Another good game that I mentioned earlier, Indiana taking on Michigan State. They've struggled. I'm not going to lie. They've struggled. They've had some tough games this year. They've won against bad teams and lost against the good teams. So not really giving much of a reason, but Michigan State's also a team that if their running game isn't going, they're not going. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get that running back stopped. If Indiana can stop that running game, how far they can get into this game before things get out of hand, and maybe get to the point in this game where they could potentially pull off the upset. But that'll take me to my game of the week. And I said it before. I'll say it again. Well, first I'll start with this. College game day is pretty much not my mirror, but what I'm looking for my game of the week. And College Game Day looks for their game of the week to go to that campus and have their show on that campus, whatever their game of the week is. They usually look for ranking and then matchup too. I'm more of a scorer type guy. So if I think that if they think that Georgia and Kentucky is two undefeated teams in the SEC East as number 1, number 11 is going to be the best television, then they're going to go there. But when I'm picking my game of the week, I think this is going to be a great game because either way, a win for this team and a win for that team could be huge for both teams. So this week, I'm going to take number 12, Oklahoma State, taking on number 25, Texas. Like I've said, Texas with Bijan Robinson, they've had some great games, and Oklahoma State this year is undefeated. So, I mean, the only losses that Texas has is against number 6 Oklahoma and against Arkansas, and we now know that Arkansas is one of the best teams in the country. So, a good game is going to come between these two teams in Texas. Texas favored by 3.5. We'll see what that. I still really like. Oklahoma State in this game. Over under set at 60. I think that'll definitely hit the over. Not included in the locks though. Not locking it up, but I think that over will definitely hit. Um, it'll be a great game in Texas for Cowboys and the Longhorns. It'll be a big game. This will be one of those games that we're talking about when we're talking the playoffs and we're talking bowl games and all of this. Um, it'll be Oklahoma State didn't play quite well against Texas. They had to slip up against Texas, but how good is Texas? Texas did lose to, or it'll be Texas did lose to Oklahoma. They did lose to Arkansas, but they won the rest of their games. Those are two really good teams that they lost to. So this will be a good telltale sign of where these teams are at, where they'll be at the end of the season. And I'm definitely looking forward to more of these close ranking wise games. So game of the week, Oklahoma State versus Texas. That'll do it for this week for the show. Lock in all those locks that I gave you. I'm confident this week. I have a feeling we're gonna go 4-0. I feel like this is gonna be the week. Yeah, take care, have fun, chill out, grab a few chips, grab a few drinks, have fun watching college football on Saturday. We'll see you next week. Adios.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the rest of our channel and subscribe. Make sure to follow our Instagram and maybe consider subscribing on Patreon for our bonus content. You can only find it there. I promise it will be well worth it. Thanks.